Welcome to the Soul Deep Podcast with Jessica Janty. Join me as we dive deep into raw, real, in-depth conversations about life, love, relationships, sexuality, spirituality, what it is we're really here for, and anything in between. I want this to feel like a safe space for anyone on a spiritual journey, trying to find answers in your truth by having open heart and open-minded conversations. And my hope for you as a listener is that you feel this is a safe space here, a place to hear things from a different perspective that may challenge you and your thinking in the best way possible, allowing you to give grace to how you've been raised or what you've been taught or told to believe. And perhaps you find your truth as I search for mine on this journey we call life. So grab your favorite drink, cozy on up to your couch or wherever you listen from, and join me for these soul deep conversations. All right, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here today. So today I have with me Kyla. Hello, Kyla. Thanks for being here. So we are going to, before we do anything, we are going to ground ourselves into some breath here. So if you are comfortable closing down your eyes, I suggest doing that. It really helps you get into the body. Obviously, if you're driving, do not close down your eyes. And so we're just going to take some breaths in through our nose and out through our mouth. So deep breaths in, exhaling out, and just keeping this cycle of breath, this inhale and exhale, where there's no beginning and no ending, just allowing your breath to flow. And as we take this time, this power of the pause, to really be with our breath, to be with our body holds so much wisdom. And if we just take the time to be still and to listen, there's so much here for us. We are so often so busy in the doing and the going that we forget just to take the time to be. And so it is a training of our body. It's a training of our mind to allow ourselves to take this time, this intentional time, to be with our breath, to be with our body. Maybe even starting at 30 seconds and building your way up so you can build this muscle, this safety in being still. Because we are so often going and doing, our body doesn't even feel safe in the stillness. So it's building this trust with ourselves. It's building this trust with our breath, that we can be still, that it's safe just to be and just to breathe, that it's actually one of the most beneficial things that we can do for ourselves is just to be. And so just taking a few more breaths here, these inhales and exhales. Really just allowing ourselves to be in this present moment. And we'll take one more big inhale together. And if you'd like a big audible exhale, letting that go. Thank you for breathing with me. You're welcome to come back to the screen whenever you're ready, or just being here with your body, with your breath, as long as you'd like to be. So thank you for that. All right. So as I was saying, I have Kyla here with me. I would love to know what you are drinking today. So what do you have with you?
Okay. First of all, I have to say, I don't know if we had a glitch right before we dropped into breath. So if you had asked me to speak or say anything, I fully didn't hear you.
Okay.
I wasn't being a jerk. What am I drinking? I'm drinking this really beautiful tea from a local company. It's I'm looking at it though, and I think all of the loose leaf has fallen out of its container, so it's this like fully loose leaf tea in there. But it's peppermint, licorice root, I think lemongrass and calendula. It's super super yummy. super yummy. My espresso machine has broken, so I'm on tea now instead of my beloved latte, but here we are.
I love tea. I do love
I,
tea.
I
I
do
don't
too.
drink caffeine,
Hmm.
or I mean, I will drink cacao that has
Hmm.
some caffeine in it, but I actually have 2 drinks here with me today because I am still recovering my throat and my
Yeah.
voice and
Yeah.
my lungs. And so I have a cup of tea, traditional medicine tea, because I love their tea, their throat coat. And then I have
Mm-hmm.
a breathe easy and throat coat together. And then I also have because I love a dandy. Have you ever had dandy blend?
I have.
Yes, I
Hmm.
love dandy blend. So it's a
Hmm.
dandelion root, and I think there's hickory root and something else in there. It's a
Hmm.
very similar flavor to coffee because
Yeah.
I do love the flavor of coffee. I just can't have the caffeine.
Yeah.
But I will put a little bit of cacao and a little bit of
Mm.
cinnamon and turmeric and then a little bit of a almond or coconut milk creamer,
Yes.
a little splash, just because I like a little cream.
Yum. Yeah, I do too. Yum, yum. Hmm. That's actually a really good idea. I feel like with my espresso machine being down, it's been down for a few months, and I've tried like all of these different things that I started, there's a Starbucks really close to my house, and I don't particularly like Starbucks, but it's convenient and it's there. And so I've been spending a lot of money on Starbucks lately, and I'm kind of over it. And I'm also very particular about the non-dairy milks that I use, and I
Mhm.
can totally taste the seed oils in their milk.
Mm.
Um, and I use it anyways. Anyway, here we are. But Dandy Blend, that's a really good idea. Maybe I'll jump into that bandwagon. Thank you
Yeah.
for that reminder.
I mean, it doesn't have caffeine, so if you need the caffeine,
I do not. I
that's
don't. I
perfect.
usually drink decaf anyway.
Okay, well, there you
Hmm.
go. It is a
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful alternative, I think. So,
Hmm. Thank you, my dear. Good reminder.
yes, so cheers to that.
Cheers.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being here. And I would love
Mhm.
it if you would just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, about yourself, all that good stuff.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Kyla Gagnon. I live in Victoria, which is on the far, far, far west coast of Canada, on a cute little, I say little, I was just talking to you about this, at a very, very big island. Um, yeah, I work as a somatic breath facilitator like yourself, and I'm an embodiment and empowerment coach for women. Mm, this feels like what I've done for lifetimes. It definitely is not. I had a whole other life before that. I'm a fur mummy. I have 2 sweet dogs. I have a lovely love, a
Mm,
beloved. Um, do love a good latte, and I love to hop on a plane. I'm pretty obsessed with like if I could get paid to Airbnb, like to plan
mm,
Airbnbs and to hunt Airbnbs, I would. That's a fun little thing about me. I'm like mildly obsessed with Airbnb and planning
mm.
vacation.
Yeah. Do you travel a lot?
Well, I used to. I used to travel a lot. It's really hard with dogs
Yeah.
um, to find. Depends on how long you're going for, but to find someone who you trust and is willing to stay at because truthfully, one of my dogs, I have a senior miniature dachshund, and he's cute as a button, but he's relatively high maintenance and like cannot be left alone. He has such severe
Oh,
separation anxiety. I know. And so if I'm having someone stay, they kind of have to like work from home and
mhm.
be happy to just hang.
Yeah.
So I don't travel as much as I would desire to, but that's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay. A
Yeah.
couple times a year. Hmm.
We have a dog, and we have this amazing lady who I don't even remember how we found her. Oh, I think I used to work with her niece actually in the
Hmm.
hospital. And we were going to go on a trip somewhere. And this was a long time ago because this was before our dog that we have now. And so we just fell in love with her. She watches dogs at her home. They have, I don't know how many acres they have, but they have this dog run where it's like this path that they take the dogs on all the time. And they're out, I don't want to say in the middle of nowhere because there are some houses around them, but they're very far spread out. The dogs can just run free, and
Hmm.
she stays home. This is what she does, is she watches dogs and stays home. And so it's so beautiful because with our first dog, they would allow the dogs to hang out with the kids, and when they had the kids at home, and our dog would sleep with their daughter. It was so precious. Like, she would send us pictures, and I was just like in love. Like, oh my gosh, it feels so good when you're somewhere and you know that
Yes.
your pets are being taken care of. Because when I
It's the
grew up, we
best.
had our dog in a kennel, and
Yeah.
I hated it. Like, our dog would get so scared, and I hated that. And yeah,
Yeah.
it was so
Yeah.
good.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
finding good someone that you can trust to watch them is,
It's a
because
big
they're
deal.
like your little babies.
They're
It's,
your
yeah,
little, yeah,
yeah, they literally follow you
children-ish.
everywhere, everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yes,
Everywhere.
yes.
Yeah. I don't have children, but I have a girlfriend who has both dogs and children. And she's like, honest to God, it's not that much different. Like,
No,
they're kind of the same. I
mm,
mean,
I
obviously
think they're
not, but
even a little bit more work at times.
mm. Well, and
Well,
they
yeah,
don't speak English. So, I know little kids don't either, but when they get to an age where they can speak, at least they can share with you like what is wrong. But
yes,
our animals were just left guessing. And
yes. Very
anyway,
true.
yeah,
Very
I
true.
love them.
Yeah. Okay, so you said in your other, you didn't say your other life, in your other time or the career. So what did you do before what you were doing now?
I might have said other life because it feels like another life. I was a personal trainer. I ran a personal training business, and I was a fitness competitor and sponsored athlete. And I worked with magazines and traveled around and went to all the expos across the states, and like had this totally different, like somewhat, it wasn't glamorous by any means, but I think it probably almost looked like it from the outside.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, really glitzy photo shoots all the time, meeting really cool, like quote unquote famous people in the fitness world. Or, yeah, I mean, I met Arnold Schwarzenegger, so that was pretty fun.
Yeah.
He's probably the only like legitimately famous person. Um, and, I did that for a really long time. I did that for about 15 years. And I liked it quite a bit, and I was good at it. And it offered me, there was a lot of perks to that job. And it also felt really superficial
Mm.
and very surface level. And mm, yeah, I was just craving a depth. I was craving something else, and I couldn't quite figure out what that was. And I was really like putting that on my clients. So as an example, I would hear my clients, they would come in and work with me for a very generally a specific body goal. They wanted their body to change. They wanted the way their body looked to be different. And so did I. I wanted my body to look different. It was all very much desiring myself to be different. And same with my clients. They desired themselves to be different. And the more I got to know my clients, and the more stories I heard, and the more information I got about their life and their lifestyle and their history and their family and their marriage, if there was one, the more it became really clear to me that there was something else. Like,
Mhm.
this is deeper than this 10 pounds that you're speaking of. But I didn't have the education. I didn't know what that meant. There was just this like guttural feeling in me. Now, what I realize now, like years out of it, is I was really putting that on them. Like, oh, their problem is deeper. Their desire is deeper. But I was totally forgetting myself in this. And what was really happening is there was so much that I was holding back from in my life. And like, kind of to short, like, without going into huge long story, my mom died when I had just turned 20.
Mm.
And I went into a very protected, like emotionally protected. I didn't really let myself have a full grieving process. I didn't go to therapy. I don't even think at any point I asked my family for help. Like, I don't think I asked anyone for anything. And I went into this like deep hustle mode, and had really overnight had to become an adult, like had to find my own place to live, had to get a job, had to pay for my rent, hydro, gas, car insurance, food, like all the things.
Mm.
And so I went into a survival protection, and kept myself for the next, call it 15, 18, almost 20 years in this really protected, rigid, got it all together. Look at how successful I am. Look at how good I am. Look at how good I'm doing, never really letting anyone in to the layers that I also hadn't gone into. And that showed up in so many different ways. It showed up in like relationships that didn't really, they definitely weren't the one, because if I was with the one, I would have to open my heart. And if I opened my heart, I would have to open the grief. So I myself was living this incredibly superficial existence, meanwhile seeing it in others and not in myself. Of course, everyone's a mirror.
Yeah.
And yeah, so then I started teaching yoga, which felt like a little bit better. I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. This is different. We're starting to notice and acknowledge the body for what it gets to do and what it can do, and not so much about what it looks like. So that felt a little bit closer, but still not quite there. Yeah. And then my acupuncturist, my sweet dear acupuncturist, who I just ran into in the grocery store after not seeing her for 5 years, she kept inviting me to this breathwork session that she was running. And at the time, like, I had no idea what that was. I had no idea what breathwork was. I thought I was teaching it in yoga. Like, I already thought I was doing breathwork. Yeah. And so I had no interest in going because I already knew it. I knew it all. It's like kind of the mindset. I was like, it sounds great. Don't need it. And anyways, eventually I went to this breathwork session. And as you know, it's not like yoga. It's not the same. And like everything just cracked wide open for me. And I met that next level. I met the depth. I met the layers upon layers of me that I'd been completely avoid of. And I never looked back. I literally left that session, hired her teacher, began like a 3-year mentorship training with him, and burned my personal training business to the ground in a matter of a couple months, 4 months. And so it is like another lifetime. It's like life before breathwork and life after breathwork for me. It's just like a drastic, it's so different. It's just like who I am and how I show up in life and in my relationships and just in my beingness is so different.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that completely. Yeah.
I bet. Yeah, I bet.
So how did you get into yoga? Because it almost sounds like yoga was a little bit of this like catalyst to get you out of, the life here, to bridge you into this life that you're in, living now.
Yeah. Well, okay. So when did I start teaching yoga? Maybe I started teaching yoga when I was maybe like 30, 31 or 32. No, maybe even, anyways, doesn't matter. In my 30s. And I had been practicing yoga for maybe 5 or so years before that and really liking it a lot. But I had this story that in order to be a yoga teacher, or at least a respectable yoga teacher, you had to have like 20, 30 years experience. You needed to live in like a monastery. You needed to have this certain life.
Yeah.
And this certain amount of wisdom. Yeah. And so I wouldn't, that wasn't me. I couldn't possibly be that person. And I don't know what actually changed for me, but there was a moment of like, of course I can. Like, I have wisdom. I have wisdom. Yeah. I have so much to share. And it's funny. My yoga teacher, his name is Ian Finn, and he often would speak about, once we were sort of through our training and stepping out into the world of teaching yoga, he's like, I know you're all going to be really nervous, but I just want you to remember that you have nothing to prove and you have everything to share. And that has always, like, I always come back to that no matter what I'm doing. If I'm doing a talk to a community, if I am, I don't know, promoting something new in my business, if I am talking to a stranger, like, I have nothing to prove. I have everything to share. And that has just been such a route for me to come back to.
Do you still teach yoga now?
I lead it in my retreats, and I have yoga in my membership, but I don't actively teach classes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I miss it a little bit because it also means I'm not really practicing. Like I'm actually not doing
Yeah.
doing much yoga, and my body's like, hey, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Yeah. It's a missing piece right now.
So cool. Okay, so you're talking about doing competitions. So did you do the competitions where so I have a friend and her friend that she worked with, I don't think they work together anymore. She would do these competitions where and I mean, I remember hearing about this from her, and we ended up going to her competition just to like support her. It was just a group of us girls, and where they, you legit have like no body fat. And then they do like the airbrushing in the certain spots, and she, and then went and stood up on the front, and then you get judged based on how you stand. And I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but it was like months of her continuously just talking about how she had to look, she had to do certain weights and she had to look a certain way and she had to only eat certain things, and she was just crabby all the time because of like my friend would be like, I can't stand working with her right now because she's so crabby. And so was it that kind of competition that you did?
Oh yeah, for like over a decade.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Oh, and it's like well, I like to think that there are people who are in that industry and in that world who do have good self worth and self esteem and who are healthy. I really do want to believe that. My experience is not the same. A lot of people I know share that experience.
Mm-hmm.
And like I started in those. So when my mom died at 20, when I was 20, I moved to a new city, got a new job. So maybe when I was 21, like maybe not even 21, maybe still in my 20th year, I started in this new city at a new gym, and the owner of the gym was this like really very lovely, but like big, strong woman who clearly had been on steroids for like her entire life, like really intense old school bodybuilder. And she came up to me and said, I'm running a competition in 9 months in the city and I'm going to train you for it. And like took me under her wing. And then we spent 9 months training really vigorously and yeah, eating a certain way. And so I think also not that she was at all like my mom, but it was like, oh, there's this older woman taking me under her wing that I'm gonna do that. But I don't know about you, but I sure as heck didn't have a ton of self-esteem or confidence at 20.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about myself. So to be put into situation, and then I just went for like again like 10 years to be put in these situations where you're being judged solely on what you look like.
Yeah.
Just what you look like. And so I'll speak for myself, and I'll speak for anyone else, inundated daily with all of the ways in which I wasn't good enough and wasn't strong enough, big enough, skinny enough, pretty enough. My boobs were natural, so they were never going to be big enough. And like, oh my gosh, all the things. And then I actually took a break, maybe for I don't know, maybe when I was 27. I think I took a break. And when I was 30, I went back, and I went back with this whole new sense of self. I was like, I know who I am. I'm a really good human. And it actually doesn't matter what they think. I'm going to do this because I love training. I love it so much. I love this whole sport of, call it bodybuilding, call it whatever we want to call it. And I did. I went back when I was 30 and had like the most fun 6, 7, 8 months prepping for it because I was doing it from a totally different place.
Yeah.
I nourished myself far differently and I won the show. I took home first place, and it was just like, yeah, it was just like, fuck yeah, I did that. And having said that, I'm 41. I still have body image issues. I've been removed from that for so long, and it's still there, because for almost 20 years, I just had people constantly talking about what I look like, judging me, trying to coach me into changing a certain part of my body. Like, it's just so intense. And my relationship with food, like, that has taken a long time to heal.
Mm-hmm.
I remember after shows, or during those times, if I went for dinner with a friend and I had like one of their French fries, I was like, I gotta get to the gym. And I would freak out and get to the gym first thing the next morning over a French fry. I'm like, that French fry was probably actually helping to build these muscles that I'm trying so hard to develop. But it was just so much brainwashing of what was good and bad. And oh my gosh. Anyway, pleased, grateful to be away from that. But yes, those were the competitions. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm glad that you talked about that, because I wanted to ask you about how it is now and how does
Mm.
body image look and how does eating look, because I know a lot of people do go through eating disorders and different things because of, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
even if you want to talk about, um, why am I losing the word? Not weightlifting, wrestling.
Bodybuild. Mm.
Wrestling. So
Mm-hmm.
wrestling, even in like high schools and things like that. Like I was listening, overhearing these kids talk about, having to weigh in. And so
Mm-hmm.
you, even in high school or whenever they start this, it's like this constant need to know what your weight is, this
Mm-hmm.
constant making sure that you are on a, I don't want to say diet, but I think it really is. It's like this diet
Mm-hmm.
of you have to eat so much protein, you have to eat all, and
Yeah.
as a kid, when you're so focused on your food and what you are eating and how it's going to, I mean, it's good to know how your food affects you, but to
Mm-hmm.
take it to that extreme, I think, how do you not have eating disorders then after that, after you go into, bodybuilding like you were, or in
Mm-hmm.
anything where you've had to, even gymnastics and different things like that, where it's like you have to look a certain way, they want you to look a certain way, and
Mm-hmm.
there's all of that behind it that we really don't think about the effect that it has on not just kids, but even adults, because you
Mm-hmm.
obviously were in your 20s when you started this, and
Mm-hmm.
how that, like, did you have body image issues before you went into bodybuilding, or was it after?
I think I had them a little bit before. Not as bad though,
Mhm,
not nearly as bad. And I definitely had my relationship with food when I was a teenager. I was like, I would eat whatever I want, and
mhm,
it's fine. Um, and it actually wasn't so much my body issue. I was always worried, am I pretty enough? Like,
mm,
was my face pretty enough? Not like, yeah, I don't remember it being so much about my body, but definitely insecurities. Um, I believe that, I don't know what, I'm making this up in my head, so I don't have like a statistic or anything, but there's a large majority of humans who have disordered eating.
yeah.
Is it anorexia or bulimia, which is what we most commonly know? No, not the majority. But if we're panicking and stressfully counting our calories or our macros, that's disordered.
Mhm,
Like, food is there to nourish us, to literally keep us alive.
mhm,
There was a time when humans just ate food from the land in the abundance that they needed to, and people were well and healthy and vibrant, and now like, we're not well and healthy and
mhm,
vibrant now. Again, the quality of our food is substantially different than it was back in the
mhm.
day. But I don't know that anyone who is in the world of fitness as a career or even as a passion, I hopefully, I might annoy someone, I might make someone angry here, and I'm totally open to hearing this a different way. But from my experience with myself and with clients and with friends who also have left the industry, there's a disorder in most of us in how we perceive
Mhm.
food. I mean, I didn't allow myself to eat bread. I didn't allow myself to eat a French fry. I didn't allow myself to eat chocolate. I didn't allow myself to eat so many things. And then when my coach was like, okay, you look good, go have a cheat day, which is a whole other thing, like that languaging is so insane to me. I would binge on pizza and like Dairy Queen, like ice cream and like I would just totally gorge myself in, not fully, but I would eat more than I was quote unquote allowed to be
Mhm.
eating because I had this fear of I'm never going to get this again. And
Mhm.
that actually still lives. Like if I'm at a restaurant and a bowl of bread comes out, I'm like I will eat it fast because there's this like inner dialogue that, I mean, I don't hear it and I'm not it, it's bizarre because I know that there will always be more food for me, but I'm eating as if I don't think I'm ever going to get to eat that again.
Yeah.
And I've been removed from competing for 10 years, more than 10 years, but from the industry for like 6 years. So it lives on. And I think like you talk about the wrestling, I had a client who was, she was a grown woman when we were working together, but she was a synchronized swimmer from the time she was 10 until I think her late teens, maybe even early 20s. She might have gone to some like national level. She's like the majority of our team had an eating disorder at 10 years old because they had to look a certain way. They had to fit their suit. They all had to have similar body types. You had to be light enough that you could like throw your partner up. 10 years old, eating disorder. Tell me that doesn't stay with you for life. Like there's some, like you're still developing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It reminds me of the scarcity piece too, where you were talking about not, wanting to eat the bread because you're not sure you're going to get it again. It kind of reminds me of this whole, if you grow up in poverty, you grow up not having a lot, then your mindset when you're older is like, I have to buy all the things and get all the things and do all the things and have all the things and
Uh-huh.
save all this money because what happens if it gets taken away or what happens if I don't have it again? It's that,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is inside of our bodies and our minds that keeps thinking that we just won't have this again. And so I need to make sure that I save up for or
Yeah.
just consume it now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Totally. I was in a Facebook group with uh, many people, but this woman was asking about, yes, books around money, like for money mindset and money blocks and relationship to money. And this one woman responded, I can't remember if she even responded with a book title, but she said she earns typically 6 figures a month.
Ooh, wow.
And still is in a panic that she doesn't have enough. And so, again, without knowing what she grew up with, I imagine,
Mm-hmm.
and if it wasn't her directly, then her parents, someone
Mm-hmm.
grew up with that story that there isn't enough. Yeah. Survival. It all
Mm-hmm.
comes back to, it's all so primal. Everything is
Yes.
so primal at the end of it all.
Yes. That it
Yeah.
is. That it is.
It's fascinating. This life.
Okay, so then you found breathwork, or breathwork
I
found
did.
you,
Found
whichever
me.
way you want to put it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then tell us, how did it change? Because obviously breathwork, it changed your life, it changed my life. Did it
Mm-hmm.
change right away, or did it take a little bit of a process, or how did
Mm-hmm.
that look for you?
It changed immediately. It changed in that session. So I can't remember if I've told you this, my story. Have I told you my story about my voice and breathwork?
I don't think so. Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. It's kind of fun. So I'm in the breathwork session and I don't, I mean, I know you know what it is, and I trust a lot of your listeners, if not all of them, are
They might
familiar with
not know
breathwork,
though,
but
in
they
case
might
someone
not.
finds it and just has no idea. Yeah.
Yeah. So the type of breath that both Jessica and I practice I think our styles might be slightly different, but it's all rooted in the same conscious, connected, circular breath. And so I'm in this breathwork session and we're breathing in and out through our mouth and it's awesome, having a great time. And one of the ways that she had us moving energy, which I do all the time, is through movement. So she had us like shaking our arms out and kind of shaking our body a little bit. That felt really good, no problem. And then she asked us to make sound, which is another way to move energy, right? Sound, breath, and movement are the top three. So when she asked us to make sound, she had the whole group start to make the sound ah. And so they're shaking their arms, they're breathing, they're saying ah. And my whole body froze, like locked into place. I shut down completely. I couldn't make a sound. Like I couldn't even force a sound out of my mouth. If I tried to scream in that moment, I wouldn't have been able to scream. And so then, of course, I go into the inner dialogue of like, what is wrong with you? Like, what is happening? How are you not like, what is actually happening? And I'm sure this whole thing was probably at the max, it was a minute. But for me, it felt like an hour of this dialogue of like, what is wrong with you? And then I started to consider, like, where did it go? Like, how long have I not had it? How long have I not had my voice? And then I started to think about how the women in my life didn't have, like, my mom didn't have access to her voice. My grandma definitely didn't have access to her voice. And then I started to think about all of the women in my life that I didn't know. And then I started to think about all of the women in general in the world that have had their voice taken from them in some way, shape, or form. And so then I am pissed. I'm like in this experience, I'm still shaking, I'm trying to breathe, and I am livid because I'm just like, I'm feeling the rage of all of it. And then she, that the however long it went on, she finally closed off the sound and just brought everyone back to their breath. And as soon as she closed off the sound, I then let out this like, this like little squeak came out of my throat. And it was so impactful in that moment to have my voice not only heard, but heard once the room got quiet. Like it was just me. I know. And it was this like instant knowing in my bones that whatever that story was, whatever that pattern in my lineage was, stops here. Like it ends full stop here. And now that like in that moment I was like, okay, well now that I've met it, now that I know I have it, I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it in a really good way. And I'm going to help other women use it because this is our power. Like this is it. And it was like, that was the moment where I was like, oh, that thing I've been seeking for the last, 10, 15 years, this is it. And so then I was in like grief, I was sobbing, and it was like grief and like anger, but also pride and excitement. It was like all of these feelings wrapped up into this moment. And I just cried and cried and cried and then laughed and laughed and laughed. Like it was just all of these beautiful feelings. Yeah, that moment was enough for me to know that I was no longer going to continue my work and that this is the direction I was going to go. So it was instantaneous. Like it's like crack. It's like one hit and you're in. I was in. I've never done crack. I don't know if it takes one, but I think it probably does. I think it's a dangerous move.
Yeah, I don't either, but oh, that's such a beautiful. I got goosebumps a couple times during that. I didn't know that story. It was beautiful.
Yeah, thank
So
you.
beautiful. And it's so interesting because I was just at this, I held a women's circle just this last weekend, and we talked about our ancestors, our lineage, the women before us, and how the women before us didn't have this. They weren't capable of sitting in space and connecting together and communing together and using their voice and using their medicine, like being these medicine women that we are. Like that was, you literally, however many generations ago, were burned at the stake for being witches, which really was just these beautiful medicine women who they were afraid of them becoming too big and whatever that story is there. But
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, finding our voice and using our voice and being and really taking up space and doing what we know and what we love and how we can help heal, because our mother, her mother, their mother, like they weren't able to do this. Like,
Oh,
we're
yeah.
able to do this now. So this is like our time to do this work. And it's important work. And sometimes I get stuck in this, like, oh gosh, and just doing breath work, or is this really going to do anything? And then I get into the session, and every time I'm reminded, oh, this is so important. This is so impactful. Like, why do I disregard it? It is medicine. It really
It's
is.
medicine.
Mhm.
It's medicine. And every session offers a ripple, like we're different. I say everyone, every single human. Like, I'm different today than I was yesterday because something happened yesterday. Something has happened today or will happen that I respond to. And now, because I've had that experience, it might even be a really cute old man smiled at me on the side of the road when I drove by. It doesn't matter what the situation is. I am a different person now because I've had this experience. And so, to think of your breath clients or you or whoever, we're different after. And so, as we're serving breath to our amazing clients, knowing, because we know the power of the breath, something, even if it's not this huge, profound aha, something has dropped in for them, and they will be different from that place, and they will show up different in their life, and they will be the ripple in their life. So, yes, it's important. Yes, yes, continue always, always, and forevermore to serve your medicine. And just trusting that. I think that's at least that's something that I'll speak for myself, especially with breath work. And I've released the control on it now. But when I first started, I would have, like one of my first private clients was my aunt. And my aunt is this super epic woman who like sits with a ton of plant medicines and psychedelics and like does really cool experiences and has this like really open soul. And she was in my living room doing breath work, and she was laying still as a rock the whole time. And I'm like, is anything happening? Why is nothing happening? Why is she so still? She's not even, there's no shaking, like there's nothing. Anyways, the session goes on, and I bring her out of it, and she lays there and she opens her eyes and she just says, Kyla, that was the most incredible experience I've ever had, not on a psychedelic. And then she began to tell me this whole visual experience and the messages that were there for her. And it's like, oh yeah, come back to trusting that this is happening, that their body's intelligence is enough. I'm not even needed. I'm literally not needed. I'm just holding space and guiding you, but it's your body's intelligence. And so always coming back to that, like, yeah, that trust in that whatever is meant for each of us is happening. It's happening exactly correctly. Even if from the outside we don't understand it.
Yeah.
And that, like, gosh, that even take that into like a wide zoom, and that's like, yeah, even the worst things in your life, even the biggest mistakes you think you're making, they're all perfectly, that's correct. Yep, that's correct. It's supposed to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. And when I first started too, I would have those experiences where you're like, people are just laying there, not much is happening. And you're like, okay, are they getting anything out of this? Should I speed this up? Should we get out of this process faster? Like I would go through all these things, or like, is their experience going to be enough? Is this going to be enough? Are they going to want to come back? Like getting so in my head about it. And it's like, I am just the vessel. So I loved when you said that, like, we're literally here just being the vessels. We're saying what needs to be said so that they can hear it. And we just sit back and, like you said, hold space. We're just the vessel. But you, as the participant, whoever's doing the breath work, it is your experience. And so it's not for us to say whether the experience is good or not, or what it's meant. It's always what it's meant to be. Always. And so
Every
it's like
single time.
getting out of your head as a practitioner and just being like, okay, just let go of that control. It doesn't mean anything about us. It is literally for our clients. It is literally for them. Like, get out of the way.
Yes, yes. The human mind. We always think we know, and like we just don't.
Yeah.
We know a little bit, but we don't know it all.
Yeah. So how are you using breathwork now? You're just online, or do you do stuff in person too? Or what does it look
I
like for
do,
you?
yeah, I do both. I have an online membership, which has breathwork, meditation, yoga, fitness, all the things, guest educators, community calls, live calls. We breathe together twice a month. It's a super fun place to be.
Mm.
I run in-person sessions locally where I live. I run retreats. Yeah, I work one-on-one with clients. Yeah, I'm kind of seeing this next year. I really want to be running live events that are more than just a breath ceremony. Like I run those every month. Those are like 2.5 hours. But I'm seeing like a bigger event. Like, I don't know. I'm just seeing bigger events, maybe like half day or full day events,
Yes.
just for people to connect and like, because yes, a lot can happen in a 2.5 hour session. We do drop in, we talk, we open sharing. But I want like, I know what happens in retreat when you have multiple days and like how deep we can go. And so, like, what's the in between? Okay, what about a full day where we
Mm,
can like really get deep with each other? And I just, so much goodness comes from spaces like that. So
100%.
much goodness. So that's a vision for this year, or I
I
guess next
love
year.
that. I love
Mm-hmm.
that because I too am very similar. So even this weekend, like I was talking, so I had a breathwork session
Mm-hmm.
on Friday night. It's an hour session, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't really get to know the people in the space very well, because you only have so much time. So then,
Yeah.
the next day I had a 3 hour, well, it's supposed to be 3 hours. We ended up going, it was almost 3.5 hours. Because if you get into these spaces where people really are there for the healing and they really show up for themselves and for the group space and all of that, there's so much that can happen. And I remember thinking after that, like, because the one girl came in and she's like, I'm going to be brutally honest. 3 hours sounds like a long time. I was thinking to myself, why? What am I going to do for 3 hours? What are we going to do here? And it was like the 2.5 hour mark, and we hadn't even done breath work yet. And so I was like a cacao ceremony, and we did intention setting and talking. We just had everybody shared so much from the heart, and it was
Mm-hmm.
just so beautiful. And it just took on this organic, whatever it needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I have a half an hour left, and I still have an hour of what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to them, like, does anybody care if we go later? And then to the one girl, I was like, and you thought 3 hours was going to be so long. And she's like, yeah. And I mean, really, nobody at that point, no one was like, oh my gosh, it's been 2.5 hours. Like, how did that go so fast? And it's
Mm-hmm.
really when you get into doing this deep work at like a soul level, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, and I'm like, I want more time. I want to have more time with these people so that we can develop this relationship. We can go through this process, and then we can sit with you at the end too. Then after you've had this process to really talk about it and integrate it and taking that
Mm-hmm.
time to journal, because that's so important too. Because most of the time when you leave a session, if you don't sit and journal right then and there, nine
Mm-hmm.
times out of 10, you're not going to go home and actually take that time for yourself to
Mm-hmm.
really reflect and really think about it and really integrate. So having that time and space after a session is so powerful too. So I was thinking the
Yeah.
same thing, like, how can we do this where it's longer? And how do we get so that people, I mean, obviously your people will find you. Your people that are like, yes, I want those longer sessions. I mean, then you're going to find the people that you're meant to serve.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally agree. I went long conversation on just agreeing with you on that, and how like longer sessions are, I think I think people do want that too. I think there's like a
Mm-hmm.
deep healing need and want that people have to be able to do
Yeah.
this work. So
Well, people are craving connection. Like it's a basic fundamental need is to connect with others. And my partner and I were walking the dogs the other day, and this cute old man walked by us. And what did he say? Oh, it's dog walking time. We're like, yeah. And we walked past, and I was like, people are so desperate for connection that's why we say these random things. Like, yes, obviously it's dog walking time. You see us walking the dogs, but we just want to, like,
mm,
it's why people say, like, hey, how about those Seahawks, or how about the weather? Yeah, it's a like a whatever super surface level thing to say, but it's coming from this deep desire to connect with another human. And we live in such a like hustle bustle go 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 world, at least here in North America, that we're not creating space for connection. And it's like, it's showing up. People are stressed, they're anxious, they feel lonely.
Mm-hmm.
We need to connect.
Yeah.
More, longer.
100%.
Yeah.
So now, do you still do fitness stuff? Because you said inside your membership, like you have some fitness stuff in there. So do you still teach fitness classes and things too?
No, I don't teach anything in fitness. I did have one single personal training client who her and I were like childhood friends. And after I quit, she messaged me and she's like, it's time for me. I have to get in shape. Are you still personal training? And I was like, I am not. And she kind of was like, oh, please. And so I did. I kept her on, but it's actually really, really fun. Although she's been on a bit of a break. So no, I don't teach it. And I actually don't add any more fitness content to the membership. It's just whatever's in there. Right now, there's probably like 30 or 40 workouts. I do it for myself now. And it's such a different relationship to fitness now. And there's still that desire. I'm like, oh man, sometimes I wish I looked like I did then. But it's like, do I want what it takes to look like that again? Because that was miserable, actually, for a lot of it was totally miserable. Yeah, no, I do not teach it. And I've like so far removed that I almost like I laugh about it and I'm like, I don't even know if I could teach someone how to properly do a push-up. Like left it. I totally stepped away.
Did you go through this period where you're like, I'm never working out again? I'm never going to touch any of this stuff. I'm never going to do it.
No, because the working out portion is always like, I've always loved it. It's been really good for my mental health and it just really, really feels good in my body. But funny, like when the pandemic happened, like I wasn't allowed to be in a gym. I couldn't go to a gym.
Yeah.
And so I actually didn't work out for probably a year, which is fascinating. I did buy a spin bike. So I was spinning, but like I didn't lift weights. And after like 17, 18 years of lifting weights every day, to go a year without it was bizarrely easy. Like my body was I think my body was like, oh, this is so nice. Thank you.
But then you picked it back up.
And I picked it back up. Yeah. Not to the extent. I probably go to the gym like 3 or 4 days a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know you have this really big mission and vision. Do you want to share that with the world?
I do have a big mission and vision. Yeah. My mission is to help 1 million women reclaim their power. And I'm almost considering changing my wording with that, but I don't want to because it feels so important and true to me. But the term reclaiming your power or the term power, I think, is misunderstood, or maybe we haven't claimed what it means to us. But to me, a woman in her power is a woman who isn't swayed by other people, who knows herself so through and through, who is able to be with herself and all of her waves of emotion. And that's one thing that I think most of us are really lacking, is a connection to our emotions, because we've been taught for our whole life to ignore, avoid, shut down, whatever. Like they're not invited here. And so because of that, we get super dysregulated and we don't even know how to be with ourselves. And so if we don't know how to be with ourselves, we're definitely not in our power. Like we are most definitely 100% not in our power. And so for me, that looks like helping women meet themselves, regulate their nervous system, regulate their emotions, be able to decipher what is a yes, what is a no for them. Yeah, what feels true and good, and to really like stand in it and go for it. And that might be in business, it might be in love, it might be in how you speak to your family, it might be in how you raise your children, but bringing it back to like what's true for you outside of the stories that you've been told your whole life. Yeah, so 1 million women, let's go.
Yes, I love that. I just love it, and that's why I wanted you to share it. But now just caveating off that last part that you just said, what you've been taught, told to believe, So, because I love this question too, but is there anything in your life as you've grown or as you were taught and told to believe as a child, like this is the way that life is, this is how it has to be, and how maybe it looks different in your life now?
So many things, actually. So many things. The first one that comes to my mind is about money. It's the story of how hard it is to make money,
Yeah.
how hard it is to keep money. It
Mm.
never stays around, there's never enough.
Mm.
Everything's very expensive. I remember I loved fashion when I was young. I still really like it, but I I loved it, and I would look through like Vogue magazine and Cosmopolitan and like all of the magazines, and I would show my mom. I would always point out the ads for the outfits that I liked or the purses that I liked, and they were always like, Versace. They were the high end, like the Versace's and the, because those were also like the most crazy ads. Like they caught your attention. So I was like, oh, I really love that. And my mom, I remember, I don't know if it was one time or if she said it a ton of times, but it landed where she's like, you have really expensive taste. You better hope you marry someone with a lot of money.
Mm.
So then there's this like underlying story of like women can't make a lot of money. Oh, interesting. So I was never specifically told, like, hey, because you're female, you won't be able to make money. And just so you know, money's really hard to come by. Like, I was never actually straight up face to face told that, but I saw the stress that it caused. I saw well, I guess I heard the like, we can't afford that, or, all of those stories. And now, like, I think probably will forever be on a healing of my money stories for as long as I live, but maybe not, hopefully not. Um, but I surround myself now with women and men, but like really importantly, I surround myself with women who make a lot of money,
Mm. Yeah.
who make it having fun and who make it with ease. And that's been really fun. And even I'll even say like what would the timeline be? Like maybe 4 years ago, I remember sitting in a master class with someone. It might have been Casey. It might have been Casey. I can't for sure say. The reason I'm thinking that is the woman who I'm thinking of who gave a response is also like a super fan of Casey's and in her world. So it might have been her. Anyways, we were asked to like claim how much we're going to be making. Like, what are you making a month? And this woman said that she was claiming that she wanted to be making $30,000 a month. And at that time, 4 years ago, maybe five, that number totally freaked me out. I got super like, I was shocked. I was like, oh my God, I could never make that. How is she saying she's going to make that? I could never. That number at that time felt so uncomfortable. And now I'm like, oh, well, of course you would make of course you'll make $30,000 a month. Of course you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just interesting to see the stories that are like right clear in my face. So, and I don't know if I ever will actually be able to go back in time and like actually see what my story truly, truly, truly was. But I definitely know that that's been a lifetime of lies, confusing stories that are not true.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, and I just hearing you say that too, it's like we grew up with the same, my parents owned a business, and when I was younger, we have four siblings, and so I'm the oldest, and when I was younger, I heard lots of the stories of, my parents didn't have much at all when they first had me. My mom was 19, my dad was 20, 21 maybe. So they didn't have much at all. We lived in an apartment, and then, they slowly built up. My dad and his brother ended up buying the business, and so then they ended up, doing better financially after a while. But when I was when I was real little and growing up, we didn't have much. We lived on very little. It was, that's too expensive, or we don't have that money for that right now. That was the story that I was told.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my youngest sister grew up in a very different time where, we
Right.
are however many years apart. And, she grew up when we did have a little bit more money. And then we ended up building this big, big, beautiful house my friends used to call the mansion. And
Mm-hmm.
so she just lived in this different time period where she
Mm-hmm.
didn't hear that we didn't have enough, because at that point my parents were now making enough. My mom was working in the business, and both of them, and they were doing much better. And so it's just very interesting. And then now I look at my life and how I've talked to my kids, because I was talked to that way. And my husband and I were very good at saving, but we were saving because we wanted to make sure we would have enough for later. And so we would do the same stories, like, oh, I don't think we can buy that right now. Is a lot of like, no, we're not going to go out to eat because that's too expensive. Or, so like listening to your story, I don't want to shame and guilt myself, because obviously I didn't know what I didn't know. But just thinking like, oh, my kids are going to have this trauma too. And they're going to have to work through all of this, and it's like, but it's their story too. Everybody has their story and their journey to go on, and all of that. And so we can't. So if you're listening and you've done the same thing, don't blame and shame and guilt yourself, because you didn't know what you didn't know, and now you do. And so now we can just do better. That's all that we can do. So
yeah. Oh yeah, these old stories. My loose leaf tea has fully loosed itself. I can like feel it in my teeth.
I used a cup the other day that had some loose leaf tea, or I had the thing in it, and then I made something else, and then it opened and I had all the tea, and I just ended up not being able to drink it after a while. So I'm like, it is just everywhere, and every drink that I take, it's all in my teeth.
That's what I feel like is happening right now. So as you're talking, I'm like trying to use my tongue. It's not working. So if this is video, I'm just getting tea out of my teeth, which is fine.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great conversation.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you'd like to share? Any parting wisdom? Anything that we didn't touch on? You're like, oh, I want to talk about that. Anything that you have yet here?
Parting wisdom. I come back to that. I don't even know at what point we were talking. Oh, we were talking about breathwork and the trusting of the wisdom and the timing of not only your body, but this journey that we're on. I was not raised in a church. I was not raised with religion. And I always trusted that there was something that was outside of myself, or at least bigger than myself, maybe part of myself, but definitely like bigger and more in charge, we'll say. But I didn't really know what that was. But there's always been this level of trust, and that level of trust is like exponentially deepened in the last little while. And I think a lot of that is coming from doing this work. And I do work with psilocybin and supporting people in psilocybin journeys. And so I've also really seen the same types of experiences through that, where the sooner that we can each come into a space of, call it surrender or honor or like co-creation, rather than feeling like you're against something or something is against you, like, can there be an acknowledgement of the co-creation? Like there is something, call it what you will, that has your back. Like you're doing it right. And I say this in breathwork to people all the time, like, you're doing it right. You're doing it correct. This is correct. And in the moment, they might think I'm talking about how they're breathing. And sometimes I am, but I mean, like, in general, you're doing it right. And you really can't mess it up. And I say that because I just fully trust that no matter what has happened, whether it feels like it's the worst thing ever or not, it is right. It's correct. And maybe right now it's hard to see it, but there most definitely will be a time when you see that you are not only okay, but you're better than you could ever possibly imagine on the other side. And the sooner we can come to trust that we're on the right path, we're on time, we're doing it correctly, and that we're supported in that, I really think the easier life will start to feel for us. We want to control things. We want to know, and we just can't. And it just causes suffering. Like, the more we desire to know and don't know, the more in a state of stress and suffering we are. And the more we can just soften that, and it might be challenging some days, but just to have something to trust into, that like, oh, all right, I just trust that this is going to be good. Mm-hmm. I just think it'll bring us a lot of ease and joy.
I love that. And I don't think I knew that you did psilocybin journeys. And so I feel like I'm going to have you back on so we can talk about that.
I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to.
Unless you want to talk about it now, but I feel like that could be like a whole episode in and of itself.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, there's so much beauty in that too. And I would love to bring that into this podcast. So
yeah, let's book it in. I love to talk about it.
Okay, we're definitely going to do that.
Yeah.
So you guys will have to stay tuned if you're interested.
Yeah, we'll definitely go there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, thank you so much for being here today. This is such a wonderful conversation. And for those of you listening, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, love.
Oh, thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you loved listening as much as I loved recording. Each and every conversation that I have here on this podcast just lights my soul on fire. I love having conversations where we explore and challenge our ways of thinking. So if you've resonated with anything here and you're looking for more, please connect with me on Facebook in my Soul Deep community group, which is free. I'm also offering all my listeners a free month in my Soul Deep Connection membership. I have poured my heart and soul into this membership, bringing you resources to help you grow into the best and truest version of yourself. I've used my knowledge and experience as a nurse, combined with my knowledge and experience as a coach, breathwork facilitator, and somatic embodiment guide. This library consists of breathwork, kriyas, and other resources and modalities that will help you learn about and give you the healing tools to live the life you've been dreaming about, and to help you find your true passion and zest for life again. This library of resources is vital for everyday maintenance. And on top of the library of resources, there are live monthly calls, ranging from breathwork, kundalini, full moon or new moon circles, as well as guest speakers on a variety of different topics, from decluttering to marketing to sisterhood and all things healing and wellness. So make sure you join today to get you back on track to living that thriving life that you are longing for. Remember, the first month is free, and my hope is that you find so much value that staying is an absolute no-brainer. It really is everything that I was looking for as I started my journey, and so much more. I truly hope to see you inside my community. And if you haven't yet, please follow me here and on social. Like and subscribe, and make sure to share your favorite episode with your friends and community. And when you do, make sure to tag me in that post. If you tag me, you'll be entered into a drawing for that month where you can win a free one-to-one session, breathwork or coaching session with me. All the links will be in the show notes here below. Until next time, Soul Deep fam, and in the words of my dear friend Mary Lacey Banks, I'm holding you so tight in a thought hug.